Alright, we're back with a part 2 of the top 10 superheroes outside Marvel and DC Comics. Let's just get right into it, shall we? At number 10 is Jack Staff, the penultimate British superhero. Not actually, this guy is actually known to be kind of a meme hero, but he's notable enough to make it onto this list. Jack Staff is known to have been alive since the Victorian era, which is when he receives his powers. And considering he hasn't aged since then, it can be deduced that he's either immortal or something pretty close to it. He uses a staff, as you could have guessed, and fights bad guys with the use of energy manipulation. This basically just means that he's able to move energy into his staff to strengthen its blows enough to break down walls, and other stuff like that. He was created by Paul Grist under his own publication Dancing Elephant Press, after his pitch to Marvel for a new Union Jack series was rejected. But since then, Jack Staff has been picked up by Image Comics, so that's a win, right? Hey, DM me on Instagram and let me know if you have any more fun facts about Jack Staff. I'd love to know more about this guy. At number 9, we have Darkman. This is a cool one. This superhero was created in 1990 by director Sam Raimi, who you should all know was the main man behind the first and best major live-action Spider-Man film series. But 10 years before that, there was Darkman, a superhero developed by the writer-director himself for a film of the same name starring Liam Neeson. Darkman doesn't have any actual powers, but when he's beaten up and left disfigured by a group of mobsters, he sets off to take down the crime ring himself. He does this by creating very realistic masks that allow him to impersonate different key players in the ranks of the mob. This film was successful and impactful enough that, at the time of its release, a comic book series with the same name was also released. And yes, this was under Marvel, but Darkman deserves a spot on this list because his origin has nothing to do with Marvel originally. I think there should just be a Sam Raimi superhero category, personally. At number 8 is Dr. Mirage. Published by Valiant Comics, this hero's powers are all concerning the realm of the paranormal, having been born with the ability to see and speak to the dead. But the story told in this series explores how Dr. Shan Fong Mirage suddenly loses her abilities. And this comes at an awful time for her as she's just lost her husband. It's a tale of irony, which I won't spoil the ending of, but it's known to be a very gripping story about love and loss tied into the superhero genre. It's fair to say that there will be a few tear-jerking moments in this one, so avoid it if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff. I mean, Dr. Mirage spends the series trying to bring her husband back from the dead, right when her powers to call upon the dead start to disappear. That's a rough one to process. Okay, at number 7 is Thunderbolt. This hero first made an appearance in 1966 in a self-titled comic book series published by Charlton Comics. Only after Charlton sold all its superhero properties to DC in 1983 did Thunderbolt make his way to the DC family. But there was a good chunk of time there when Thunderbolt was completely indie. But that's the backstory of how it's made. What about the hero himself? Well, he's definitely got a cool look and name, but his abilities are kind of basic, all things considered. He's basically just got the classic enhanced strength, speed, and durability. One notable power would be his telepathy and control over animals, which is pretty cool. His origin is pretty unique, having studied with Tibetan monks who believe him to be the Vajra, or the protector of the monastery. This training gives him a mantra that allows him to push through some pretty challenging encounters using the power of his mind, repeating, "I can, I must, I will," to avoid succumbing to pain and fatigue. At number 6 is Witchblade. This comic series was first published by Top Cow Productions, part of Image Comics, starting in 1995 and ending in 2015. But picked up again in 2017 and then 2021 for new series. So this indie superhero has had quite a life already, without being touched by DC or Marvel. The superhero in the story isn't one person, but a handful of them, basically anyone who wields the Witchblade, which is a conscious, ancient gauntlet that gives the wearer superpowered abilities. The Witchblade is more than a weapon though. It's actually known as the male offspring of the Darkness and Angelus, two opposing aspects, as they're called, of the universe. And for some strange reason, whoever hosts the Witchblade must be female. The original host was Sarah Pizzini, a New York City detective. Then the weapon was taken on by Danielle Baptiste, a young dancer with impulsive tendencies, and it currently is hosted by Alex Underwood in the Revival series. The Witchblade offers powers of summoning, usually used for weaponry and armor, healing powers, superhuman strength, and shapeshifting, among other traits. Coming in at number 5 is the Spirit. This hero makes his debut back in 1940 as part of a 16-page newsprint created by Will Eisner. So this guy is very old, and makes most of his mark with the 5 million copies sold in the 1940s alone. In these newspaper prints during the Golden Age, the Spirit makes his mark as one of the most popular superheroes even during Marvel and DC's rise to fame. His abilities aren't very advanced, but considering he came in right at the cusp of the concept of superheroes becoming popular, this isn't much of a shock to me. He was still in the phase where most of the Spirit's adventures could even be confused with that of a noir detective. But he did have formidable athletic abilities, hand-to-hand combat, and almost superhuman endurance. But in later adaptations, he is eventually given superhuman longevity as well as healing abilities, solidifying him as a definitive superhero that may be responsible for many of the heroes we know today. At number 4 is the Darkness, another creation from Top Cow Productions. This anti-hero first makes his debut in 1996. But before his own publication, he appears in Witchblade number 10, introducing a dark and sort of evil-looking character. But despite his work in the criminal underworld, he's still widely considered a superhero or anti-hero, so I'm keeping him on the list. The story is about Jackie Estacado, a 21-year-old gangster who, on his 21st birthday, inherits the Darkness. The Darkness is an ancient entity that predates the history of the universe and passes from one host to another between generations. When Jackie takes it on, he's given a set of powers that give him access to a dark dimension and telepathic control over the demons within that world. The Darkness also grants him mystical armor that gives him super strength, speed, stamina, healing, and even flight. Alright, at number 3 we've got Avatar Korra. Korra is a superhero. She has superpowers in her own comic book series. Most people who get lost in the magical world of Avatar might not realize that the stories being told in this world are very similar to those of your typical superhero story. Korra trains at a young age in waterbending, earthbending, and firebending, which are pretty much superpowers. Except in this world, it takes dedication and training to acquire these powers, whereas in many superhero stories, powers are often stumbled upon or gifted at birth. Following the death of Avatar Aang, Korra takes up the mantle of Avatar at the early age of 4, when she performs her impressive grasp of the Avatar powers to the Order of the White Lotus. It's a really powerful and impressive universe that Nickelodeon has put together, and it's not often that such a thorough and immersive world is started in the context of a children's cartoon. So Korra deserves a spot high on this list. At number 2 we have Starlight from The Boys. This superhero comic series was released in 2006 by Wildstorm Comics, which I know has been part of DC since 1999, but it's still not considered part of the DC universe, so I'm gonna let it count. Starlight is born to mortal parents, and when she comes out of the womb, she actually accidentally blinds her parents with her powers. Due to the increased cost of living with their new disabilities, her parents have to give up Starlight for adoption. When she joins the Seven, a group of supes as they're called, with questionable morals and intentions, things only get worse for her. She's involved in some pretty traumatic events and is treated pretty badly. But eventually she starts standing up for herself and things start to get a bit better for her. I'm gonna leave it there because this is a great story and you should get into it whether you watch the show or read the graphic novels. Okay, finally at number 1 we have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. First published by Mirage Comics in 1984, TMNT was actually meant to just be a one-off comic issue, but due to its popularity, the creators decided to keep it going. The legacy of these 4 beloved reptiles began one insignificant night when co-creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird were doing some brainstorming, and they thought it was a funny image to have one of the slower animals in the animal kingdom be adept at martial arts. Little did they know this would become, well, what it is today. They don't necessarily have superpowers, but I mean, Batman doesn't either. And I figured everyone loves Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I would probably argue that they're superheroes, so I put them number 1. When I remembered that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started in comics, I knew I had to put them on the list. So here they are, at number 1, right where they belong. Alright, what did you think of this list? Shoot me a DM on Instagram and let me know. I'm open to any and all suggestions for future videos as well, so let's have a chat. Let's get into it. This has been Top 10 Nerd. I've been your host Ben Ball, and as always, see you next time and stay nerdy.